If you've ever been on an MPQ leadership programme or spent 5 minutes scrolling LinkedIn, you've probably heard this debate. Are you a leader or are you a manager? Apparently, you have to choose. Leaders inspire, managers organise, leaders create vision, managers keep the wheels turning. But here's the problem. After nearly 20 years in schools, leading departments, leading sixth forms, and now working in senior leadership, I don't think that's how schools work at all. In fact, when I completed my Masters, this was exactly the question I wanted to answer. And what I found completely changed how I think about middle leadership. Because the best middle leaders aren't leaders or managers, they're both. And if you're aiming for senior leadership, understanding that could completely change how you develop yourself. When I started reading the research for my Masters, I found shelves full of books trying to separate leadership from management. Leadership was about vision, management was about systems, leadership was about change, management was about maintaining standards. It all sounded extremely logical until I walked back in school on Monday morning, because schools don't work in neat little boxes. Think about a head of department. Before break, they're sorting staffing, dealing with attendance, replying to parents, and looking at assessment data. That's management. After lunch, they're coaching a teacher, leading curriculum development, and planning how to improve outcomes. That's leadership. Same person, same day, same job. The reality is that schools don't allow us to choose. The best middle leaders don't switch between leader and manager. They combine both, often within the same hour. I wanted to know whether middle leaders actually saw themselves as leaders or managers. So I surveyed heads of department and heads of year. What surprised me wasn't the answers. It was what people refused to do. Most wouldn't choose one or the other. They described themselves as both. One talked about creating a vision whilst managing processes. Another described leading people whilst dealing with the day-to-day realities of school life. And that really resonated with me, because that's exactly what middle leadership feels like. You're trying to improve tomorrow while making sure today still runs smoothly. Middle leadership isn't about choosing leadership or management, it's about constantly balancing both. This is something I see all the time. People say, I'm doing the management now, but eventually I want to become a leader, as if management is somehow the boring bit you graduate from. I don't agree. In fact, the more senior leaders I work alongside, the more convinced I become that the very best leaders are exceptional managers. Not because they enjoy spreadsheets, although some of them do, but because they know that brilliant ideas achieve nothing unless somebody makes them happen. Vision without implementation is just ambition. Leadership only changes schools when somebody follows through. If you can't implement change, you can't lead change. Imagine two heads of department. The first is full of ideas. Every meeting is inspiring. Everyone leaves excited. 6 months later, nothing has changed. Now imagine another head of department. Everything is organised. Deadlines are met. Reports are completed. But nobody is improving. Both departments have a problem. One has leadership without management. The other has management without leadership. The schools that improve have people who can do both. This is why I think middle leadership is one of the best apprenticeships for senior leadership. You're learning how to influence people, develop colleagues, improve systems, balance strategic thinking with operational reality. Those are exactly the same skills senior leaders use every day. The scale changes, the skills don't. Don't underestimate what you're learning as a middle leader. It's preparing you for far more than your current role. So here's something I'd encourage you to think about this week. What am I managing well? What am I improving? Who am I developing? If you can answer those 3 questions honestly, you'll probably learn more about your leadership than any appraisal document will ever tell you. If your goal is Assistant Headship, Deputy Headship, stop asking, am I being enough of a leader? Instead, start to ask, can I balance leadership and management? Can I improve systems? Can I develop people? Can I maintain standards? Can I turn ideas into action? Because that's what senior leadership looks like every single day. My masters allowed me to answer one question. Can middle leaders be described as leaders or managers? After months of research, interviews and conversations, my answer was simple. No. The very best middle leaders do both. They manage the present while leading the future. And the more experience I've gained since writing that research paper, the more convinced I am that the same is true of every great senior leader I've ever worked with.